Welcome everyone. Sorry, forgot my light. Why do I forget my light? Because it's so blaring. I probably don't want to put it on. Happy Monday and welcome to the very first of our Yoga Therapeutics. One class every day, 7 days, 20 minutes, and you can tick off your yoga practice for the week, day. And how many was 17, 40? Wow, that's like 2 and a bit hours of yoga. And that's not to say that if there's anything else in our little book of tricks that you would like to do that you can't do them, because 20 minutes, most of them are super duper easy. Tonight's class is yoga for better sleep. One of the common, what would I say? I'm going to use the word ailments for the want of a better word, that people often come to finding a yoga practice is to help them with, say, insomnia, difficulty getting to sleep. For a lot of people, they find that they might go to sleep and then they wake up and then they can't go back to sleep. And often when we are confronted with, let's say, the circumstances that we are today, where there's lots to think about, there's lots of decisions to be made, there's uncertainty, there's questions that you're asking yourself all the time. Sometimes our sleep patterns can be disrupted. So tonight's class is all about supporting ourselves for better sleep. A couple of things that I would definitely mention when it comes to sleep is setting yourself up for a very good sleep practice. And I'll talk about that a little bit towards the end, but one of them would be something like keeping the lights quite subdued, leading into going into sleep. So for example, you wouldn't be looking at devices or bright lights, obviously trying to really begin to calm and wind the body down. One of the poses that we will start with is called Siddhasana. Seated Siddhasana, which is a seated pose. It's like cross-legged, but rather than crossing the legs really tightly, it's almost like if you can, I'm sitting on my cushion, if you can, it's like we're running the legs parallel to each other. When you're ready, let's just take a few moments for pranayama, and I'll lead us through just a paused pranayama. It's nothing that's challenging or difficult, but again, very important when we're trying to go and move into better sleep patterns. Really need to slow down that breathing. Let's try it here. I'm breathing in through the nostrils. We know that slows the breath down. And breathing out slowly. What you might like to do with each of the breaths here is notice that when you get to that moment of exchange between the two breaths, the inhalation and the exhalation, that we sit on the pause just for a moment longer. See if we can try that here. Each of the pauses, just sitting there a fraction longer. You don't have to hold it for indefinite, but just a nice sort of dropping into that moment of pause, that quiet moment. Begin to notice on each of the exhalations that you invite the body into really releasing and letting go on that exhale. Really softening. Really allowing the tension just to feel as though it can sort of, just melt away from the body. Letting the shoulders soften. Allowing the perhaps nice to be just a little more space between the ears and the shoulders now. Take 3 more breaths here. Full deep breath in, slowly, smoothly and steadily. Acknowledging a little longer time on the pause. On the exhalation, consciously relaxing and letting go. Dropping the shoulders, softening the facial muscles. Whenever you're ready, just allowing the 2 legs to extend out in front here. You have definitely the option of still sitting up onto a little bit of a prop. I am going to. I'm just going to sit on the edge, right on that little corner piece of mine. You can do this on a blanket if you want to as well. Paschimottanasana, forward fold. As we do so here, just let the hands, if you have blocks, come and rest onto the blocks as we fold forward here. Obviously, important that when we do go to sleep that the brain tips, as the brain tips forward, this is a very relaxing position for the head to be in, also for the brain to be in. So as the brain tips towards what we call the prefrontal cortex of the head here, this is a very calming aspect here. And we know that because going the opposite way, tilting the head back, is more of an alert position. So chin towards the chest, more tilting the head forward, is very soothing and calming on the brain. So you'll find a lot of sleep related poses have very much a forward bend in them, or what we call flexion. Again, relaxing, stretching the back of the neck. Obviously addressing areas of tightness that traditionally sit in the body, hamstrings, lower back. Because if the muscles are tense and tight, then again, this brings in a whole element of tension and tightness through the entirety of the body, challenging it obviously to go to sleep because it's too tight. It's wired. The muscles are tense. So if we can unwind the tension in the body, the mind will be a little less agitated. And as we breathe in, just softly lift up, allow the left foot to come into Janu Shavasana, doing the same thing here again, folding forward. As the blocks come in, just letting the forearms and just rest onto the blocks. So the practice, in order to prepare for sleep or to encourage better sleep patterns, is not a stimulating practice, obviously. So they're not poses where we would encourage ourselves to be challenged by. We want to be mindful of the breaths that we take. Again, slow, long, softening breaths, not pushing or forcing in the pause, but inviting more softness in. Bring your hands back onto the blocks as we inhale. Use the hands just to softly press into the blocks to gradually lift the trunk up. Again, remember, we're not in any hurry. Switch the legs over, even making your transition from one side to the other or from one pose to the other, making that nice and smooth and slow and steady as well. Again, nothing to bring about agitation. breaths in, noticing wherever the space is. In this instance, it should be feel a little bit more spacious across the back of the body. This is where perhaps we can imagine breathing into the back of the lungs now and getting that sensation of a stretch and an openness to the back, allowing it to soften. Breathing in, bringing the blocks up, slowly allowing the trunk to come up. Wide legs, sitting either side of the mat, maybe even slightly even wider than mine. I'm still very happy sitting onto the tops of the blocks here. Put the blocks up a little higher on this one. If we can come forward, let the forehead rest. And if not, make a mountain, make a fist here so that the elbows rest onto your knees or your thighs. And again, come forward. Still trying to imagine though that the back is straight, that it isn't rounded. And that fisted structure is often quite nice. Even if you need to do more than that, you need a block and a bit, that's fine. The softness of the fists here, just resting onto the forehead. Again, it's comforting on I talked about that prefrontal cortex of the brain here. It's quite soothing to have the forehead resting onto the hand. So the backs of the legs, the inner legs, and the back line of the body are all being stretched and released through here. And again, when we unwind this, sleep patterns will be slightly more conducive to rest because they've been released, that they're also not themselves under tension. Just coming back up slowly on the inhale, press into the blocks again. Remember, transition slowly is important. And then just bringing the blocks back in. Legs come together. Come around. You won't need any propping from here. Now I know this one isn't always a favourite, but this is called a Virasana. It's like a reverse hero pose. My suggestion would be to, if you could, come back and bring the arms onto, say, some blocks. Again, chin to chest. This is now so that we can at least awaken that front part of the body in the sense of not alert awaken, but get some stretch into sometimes some very tight front leg muscles. We'll also do crescent in a second because of the tights of the hip flexors. Again, if that's too far, it might just be that you come back a little way, as long as you can feel. There's a little bit of work going on here. For some people, they're probably saying, oh, I can feel it under the shins. Again, that's all fine. Even if you get something higher that you might want to prop up onto, it's okay. Or you don't need anything, just bend the elbows. And though remember, we're not going to look up as we would in plane. We're trying to quieten everything down, so that's why this is a nice encouraging pose to drop chin to chest. And keep that back of the neck now long. Settling the breath down. And breathing in as we use the hands to slowly come back up. Keep the gaze soft and keep your gaze down as you transition with the blocks to come forward into crescent. Taking more opportunity now to stretch over the joint of the hip flexors. Definitely use props now because We don't want to add any strain or work to the arms. I don't even mind if in this pose you were to let your chest rest onto your thigh. Again, that's nice. It can be nice not to have to weight or press into the blocks. Just subtly press the right shin into the mat and slightly pulling the right hip forward. So again, no force with any of the poses. Know that what the aspect of the poses to address, and that's the joint, the hip flexor joint, but don't overdo it. Ease back out slightly. Walk the left foot off the mat for lounge lizard, but prop it as we do so. So as we come down and through, forearms onto the blocks now, so that there isn't that intensity that often comes from the pose. Again, softness with the gaze, not looking up but keeping the gaze down. And the other point that you could consider with the gaze as well, as we say, soften the gaze. So rather than harshly, with this intense look at the mat, and more of a softness to the gaze. In other words, maybe even a slight sort of semi-closed sort of eyelids, not closed, but not staring with intensity. Soft gaze. As we breathe out, see if that left hip can open. Can you drop into the hips a little more and let go of the shoulders? Try not to load into these blocks. Just use them as mechanisms to hold the body where it is, but not to load into them. And then when you're ready, as we come back out, hands will go onto the block, smoothly transition out. Again, still keeping the gaze down. Step through for crescent with those blocks. Come through the front here. Gently ease the hips into it. Hands on blocks or resting the chest onto the thigh. A gentle press of the shin to the floor and a subtle pull of the hip forward, but again with no intensity to it, just enough to feel the hip wanting to open. Walking the leg off, the right leg off. Lounge lizard, foot on that diagonal. Forearms on the blocks, rolling out on the outer edge of the foot, letting the knee float out to the side, again exposing just a little bit more of that inner leg line and opening out the hip here. Mindful of facial muscles being soft, gaze soft, and letting go of the shoulders. Walking the foot back in gradually. As the foot comes in, propping back up. Walk the blocks in, so keep hold of the blocks as you slide the two legs together for me here. As we come down into, and again have some kind of softness underneath, I'm going to suggest underneath the backs of the legs, the bolster. Maybe if you feel like something soft on the head, I would encourage that if we were about to go to bed within the next 10, 15 minutes, which if you're with me now, you're not, I would always encourage an eye pillow. Whether you not like it centered or not, it's up to you. Again, it blackens out, there's also a notion of knowing that when a very gentle aspect of pressure on the eyes, as light as it would be in an eye pillow, there's this cue that it gives to the eyes, and because the eyes are muscle, just to sort of drop back a little bit, not to hold itself forward, but to sort of sit back into the eye sockets a little more and relax. This is butterfly pose or Baddha Konasana in a lying position. Later on this week we'll do Supta Baddha Konasana, which is when we're on an incline. But this one is just as soothing for the body as well. Just allowing the body to be supported by any prop that you might have. Be it that bolster underneath the backs of the knees, or the softness of a blanket or a cushion underneath the back of the head, just to invite that element of softness into the body, where it can know it can let go without having to be having to hold itself out in space. Allowing just the breath to return back to full breaths coming in. Just a subtle pause. And then that letting go of the breath and the letting go of tension. Let's find 3 more of those breaths here. Full breath in. Acknowledging a slightly longer pause. And then just that releasing on the exhale. Pausing again. And the last breath together. Coming out of a Supta Baddha Konasana pose, again, because we're trying not to overwork the body, helping the legs come back in together would be important. Walking the feet in and bringing the knees to the chest, releasing, if you've got your eye pillow, just releasing it off. Just a gentle knee hug. Again, transitions are really important when we're winding down, which we would do, which is our intention here. They're grounding poses and they're winding down poses. I wouldn't rock up to sit because it is stimulating. So I would roll to the side and bringing my hands onto the floor and just using the floor as the mechanism to help come back up. Again, not throwing the head back up, but again, keeping it nice and slow and synthetic. All of these elements add to the that notion of keeping the brain settled and less active and less stimulated. One of the other things that I would suggest, if you do find going to sleep challenging, as I said, the eye pillow is it's beautiful once the brain and the mind gets connected together. It's a really lovely thought. If that doesn't agitate you, I know for some people it can be quite daunting having it on. The other thing I would definitely suggest in terms of sleep is looking at the environment and things like essential oils that really are ancient techniques of how to calm. And we all know about things like lavender, very good soothing calming oil, but most of your tree-based oils, so for example in doTERRA, which is the oils that I use, they've got oils that are called like arbor vitae or arbor vitae, which is a tree, things like cedarwood, vetiver, it's a grass, it's a plant. There's another oil that they have called peace, another one called lavender peace, and the one that we often would use in the studio, balance. use things like essential oils to help calm, and even things like just a gentle warm bath, not a hot bath, again, because the heat can be, you know, two ends of the spectrum, hot and cold, but a nice warm bath can be very helpful as well. Soothing music, some of you yoga music is really helpful too, really, you know, low, quiet music, and obviously things like meditation. Come join me tomorrow morning. We're going to go and take a practice tomorrow morning at 6:30, and then we'll dive straight into meditation at 7. Not straight in, but we might have a 5-minute break in between because meditation will be at 7. I hope you enjoyed a little bit of 20 minutes wind down. Even though it's classified as yoga for sleep, it's basically just a nice evening wind down practice to do. Have a lovely Monday, everyone. Take care, and I will see you tomorrow morning at 6:30.